Hello, my name is Gary, and I decided to film a video to see if podcasting is for me. I am a maker of things, and my current obsession is knitting and crochet and fiber arts, spinning, dyeing, weaving, all that. I've done knitting and crochet so far, and I've been wanting to make podcasts for all these makey kind of things that I do for years, but I always linger and find excuses and reasons not to. There's all kinds of reasons to delay this, to wait until I get the good lights. I want to order some lights from Amazon, to wait till I have a nice setting with a proper desk. I'm just at my dining room table here. But I'm watching years pass, and I've done all kinds of cool things that I would like to share. I have shared in various ways, but I've wanted to be more. I've wanted things to be more personal for a long time, where I can chat with people and meet them and share. But there's something about video that's much more personal connection than just some pictures on Instagram or Facebook posts or whatever. So I wrote down some thoughts, and it's just an index card, and I just wrote, these are the things that I want to do, and I just brought everything from around the house that I thought would make a good first episode if indeed this becomes a podcast. I don't know yet. It might. I'd like it to. So, I'd like to just get started. One of the things that also kept me in more recent times from doing anything, from doing a podcast, from sharing myself, is that I'm sort of all over the place with hobbies. I'm not going to get into them in this opening, and I'll just say that I have a lot of them, like woodworking is one. And I really go all into each one. They sort of take over my whole life, and I'm in that one for a while, for a few years maybe, and then I find another one and I obsess over that. So who knows, next I'll be into welding. So this is attempt 2 at recording this. I recorded an hour and 20 minutes last night, and my phone crashed, and it came back up, and I only had 30 minutes, and then I tried to film the last half again, and a minute or two, and it crashed hard again, and now I can't get the phone to boot back up, so I'm without a phone at the moment. I found my old iPad mini, which I haven't used in a long time, and then I can't find the charging cable, so an hour later it occurred to me that I have a Halo. It's like a little bag with a bunch of adapters and a battery pack in it, something my mom got for me. And my mom is the focus of today's podcast. More on that in a moment. So I was able to charge it. It took 20 minutes before it would turn on. It's a mess, but we're going. We're starting. So I did say I was sort of polyamorous with all my hobbies. I do lots of different things, and that's been another reason that I haven't started a podcast or whatever this is, because I thought, I don't know who my audience is. Do people do all of these different things? Would someone who knits follow me when I start doing things back in the wood shop again, which I haven't done for a few years, but I'm going to soon. I've been slowly cleaning that up and getting that started again. But I had to think of this book, Tribes by Seth Godin. I have a weakness for these business books. I've spent a lot of time circling the business sections in every bookstore, and I go to a lot of different bookstores. And the thing that I find interesting, I've probably read 10 of them so far. I have like 50 of them. I keep picking these up for, a lot of times I get them like $1 at, used at public libraries. I always seem to come away with like one thing I like that I want to use in my life. The thing that Tribes spoke to was my attempt for several years to get people interested in a few different things in my career. I write code. And there's a way of writing code that I'm really interested in, and I've been studying it. I just came back from a convention all about that in Boulder, Colorado. I live in Los Angeles. I've gotten precisely 0 people interested in this for all the 4 years I've been trying, and I've found people who are interested, a few. I've gotten no one. I don't think I've caused a single person to consider anything. So this book told me something I needed to hear. The one thing I took from this book was that you're just not going to get any random group of people interested in your idea. So the idea in the book Tribes is that your tribe is out there. They're just scattered to the winds. And that's what this is. I'm sort of finding my tribe, like who will follow me through all these hobbies. I'm super interested in how things actually work. Not just following a pattern or a plan in woodworking, pattern in knitting or crochet, but actually saying, what am I actually doing? What are the small pieces of this? And how can I start combining those small pieces to make new things? I like to invent. And there are a lot of people who want to follow a woodworking plan or following a knitting pattern because they just want the final object, and or they just want the motions of making a sweater because it's just enjoyable. Totally cool. This is not a judgmental thing. It's just me personally. My joy comes from finding the new thing. What's the thing no one's seen or few people have seen? Something. A lot of times I end up reinventing something. It's just no one's been thinking about it for a long time, and I reinvent it. So I thought I'd start with some old FOs, which, if you're not savvy, is the knitting world's way of saying finished objects, so things I've made. I started in mid-February. It's now mid-June. It's June 14th, I think. And my mom's birthday is June 18th. So I'm sort of scrambling to put some stuff together, and I'm going to ship it today. That's why I was filming last night, because I thought, my mom gave birth to me. Why not make the birth of this podcast, if that's what it is? That's what I'm going to end up calling it, podcast, if that's what it is. Why not make the beginning of this about her? But then the phone exploded. Not literally, but I'm back. It's the next morning, gotten no rest. And I thought I'd take you on my little knitting journey just to get started, and then we'll sweep into what I'm doing for Mom. So, to start, I got into knitting because I love making things, and knitting was always something I was going to try at some point. I've always thought, if anybody said knitting, I would always think, oh yeah, I got to try that. That's probably fun. It's another thing to make. Another way of making, another whole field of things to study. I love that. So, I was in Barnes & Noble in mid-February, and there I found the magazine rack, and it was full of woodworking books. I actually haven't been obsessing about woodworking for a few years, but I really obsessed about it for a lot of years before that. And there were a lot of woodworking magazines. I actually bought 2. I haven't looked at them, but they were so nice, and I thought, man, 5 years ago, I would have just bought the entire rack. It would have been out hundreds of dollars just because they were all really good, the books. All kinds of woodworking journals and magazines. So there was also a Let's Knit. Let's Knit is a magazine, and this one came in a plastic bag with another little bag inside with yarn and needles. And they were the worst yarn and the worst needles, which I now know. It was just red, yellow, and blue. You can find what I made with them on Ravelry. My username is GFixler, Gary Fixler, Gfixler. And it's just a little Herb the Bunny. It's an egg-shaped rabbit with ears. It was knit flat and seamed. There are photos. All of my Ravelry projects, I post a bunch of process photos and put little writings under anywhere that makes sense to do so. After knitting this much, there's only like enough to make this much of a scarf. It wasn't even a scarf. I was just practicing knitting because the book did not, the magazine, $16 magazine that came with needles and yarn, didn't tell you how to knit. So I thought that was going to be my way in, but I had to use YouTube, which is fine because I love learning through YouTube. I'm always watching YouTube how-to videos on everything. Welding, plastic injection molding techniques, machinery, yarn and spinning and carding and all that. I went to Joann and I bought 4 fibers. I bought a Patton's classic worsted wool in gray mix. It's just a worsted yarn. I also picked up cotton. I picked up, it was weird. I picked up not peaches and cream. That's Michael's. Sugar and cream. Cream and sugar. Mm-hmm. A Lily brand yarn. Cotton, 100% cotton. And dark blue, it was not a good choice because you need a lot of light to be able to see what you're doing. I got acrylic. I got a Caron 1 pound of bright green limeade And the reason I bought that one was because acrylic was the cheap stuff, and I figured that's going to be what I'm going to learn on. And I just wanted to, I was already starting to see all these terms everywhere, like knit two together and, yarn over. And I thought, oh boy, I'm going to have to just practice a lot of stuff to get the muscle memory. I call it getting the hands. When I'm struggling, I say I don't have the hands yet. And then when I'm flying along, I say, ooh, I got the hands finally. All the different hobbies that I go through have hands that I have to get. It's like when my hands finally just do the thing and I'm just having a good time and I'm not sitting there struggling, like dropping yarn and having the needle fall on the ground for the 100th time. So many times. I wanted to... juggling was a hobby for a while too. I was always juggling it. And when you drop a ball, it bounces off your foot and it rolls 2 rooms away under a couch. And I thought, I really want to get like a parachute and hook it to the ceiling all around me. And then it would come down and cinch around my waist like a belt. And it would just be the fabric for me up to the roof. So I could juggle, and if I dropped anything, it would just roll to my waist. And I'd just pick it up and keep going. I played with DPNs a little right away. And I was surprised by many people saying, DPNs? You just started. I'm 10 years in and I've never touched them. There's a lot of fear in this hobby. I'm sort of fearless. I just try stuff. I just go, DPNs? Sure, let's see how those work. And, I get a little frustrated when stuff is difficult, but I don't care. I just keep going. So this was my first, not my first project. I did a lot of little swatches of all different kinds of things. Cables in the worsted wool. The fourth fiber, by the way, was polyester, 100% polyester. I got a big skein of Bernat blanket. So I didn't want to do blends. I wanted to learn each fiber on its own before I started saying, what is wool and acrylic mixed together like? So this was my first project. This is Limeade, the Caron 1 pound. I still have a small cake of it left, even though I've used it for so many little swatch samples and things. Made 2 hats out of it. This was the first one. It's I was obviously having fun making ribbing because this thing's like 2.5 inches tall, and it just flips straight into stockinette, right from the ribs. And I ended up buying, I want to say, a 16-inch clover takumi bamboo. Takumi, by the way, is Japanese for artisan. Now you know. I looked it up. Takumi is all their bamboo needles, so I bought a circular needle, and I remember it being too tight. Also, the bamboo really grabs onto this acrylic, and when you have a lot of stitches on the needles, it's so hard to... I was like wrestling the whole time, and my hands were killing me. But I made it through. It has a lot of tension issues. If you hold this right in the light, see it's very lumpy. The stitches are actually kind of uniform, but the tension problems, this is not flat fabric. You can see rows of my tension just constantly changing. Part of that was just because I was a very tight knitter when I started, but also the needles were really grippy and the cord wasn't long enough. This came out undersized. It was supposed to be for me, and I just used a pattern online where they said this many stitches, and I didn't swatch. I don't think I knew about swatching yet. Swatching is where you make your little gauge and then you measure how many stitches you're getting per inch, and then you can start doing the math to figure out how many stitches you need for a 24-inch head. And this isn't quite enough. It's sort of like a Steve Zissou, The Life Aquatic. Zissou? Is that how you say it? It's like a fisherman's beanie. It's waiting to go flying off my head. But and I showed this online, and everybody was like, "Oh, how did you do this?" And all I'm seeing is errors everywhere. Like, this is a mess. How did I do what? I did this because I don't know what I'm doing yet. It has I don't know what these are. Drop stitches, maybe. Who knows? It's got problems, but it's a hat. Look at it. It's a hat. It's got, it's all pearls inside. You can really see the tension problems inside. But it was a hat. And I was only, I don't know, a couple of weeks in at that point. So, not much later, I learned crochet. I'm learning both back and forth. When I first started, I was forgetting. I'd go to do crochet, and then I'd come back to knitting, and I'd be like, how do you cast on? And then I go back to crochet, and I'm like, what is a chain? Every time I'd switch, I'd forget. Now I finally have it down, at least all the basics. So my second hat, actually, I don't think it was my second hat, I think it's my third, but I'll do this next. I did this. It was supposed to be a beanie. Came out like a tam o'shanter. But it has ribbing. The ribbing is just me knitting back and forth in this direction through the back loops. That creates a rib. I read that online, so I just started trying it and playing. Went all the way around. And I was sort of like wrapping it around and going, does that look like it fits my head? You know, just stretching it around my head like a headband. And I got it to fit my head. I think this is the beginning there. It's kind of doesn't fit the pattern perfectly. And when I got there, I just sort of seamed it together as well as I could manage. And then I turned and I started going around doing the seeds and then just spiraled all the way into the middle. So it does fit on my head, sort of. It's like it's weird. It also feels like I've seen this kind of hat before. I don't know the name of it. Just problem there. Missing something. I think that's where it seemed. Anyway, so that was number 2. Actually, I think it was number 3. Number 2, I think, was this one. This was Woolies, Wool-Ease, E-A-S-E, like easy wool. This is an 80% acrylic, 20% wool yarn from Lion Brand. I loved it. It felt really nice, squishy, gushy. I say gushy. And I wanted to make my mom a hat. I remember, I think for my second hat, I thought, I'm going to make her one. I think I get it now. And I used bigger needles, bigger yarn. It'll be easier, blah, blah, blah. And I made this monstrous, ridiculously huge hat. And the idea for the hat actually came from the label. This is butterscotch. It's very spongy. This feels really good to do that. It's super soft. Feels almost like a down comforter. It has such a squishiness to it. So that was all it was. I looked at the pattern and I went, that's just 2x2 rib all the way up and some decreases at the top. I think I can figure that out. So I didn't use a pattern. I just went by the photo. And this originally folded down. But I had to stitch it up because it's so heavy. Such a drapey thing. Ready? It's so big. I could put this over my shoulders, I think. It's like a sweater. So when I first put this on, before I sewed it up, this thing came all the way down to here. The rim. So anyway, enough about that hat. I love it. I'm keeping it. I'm keeping all my original stuff. I kind of only give stuff away when I've intentionally made it to give away. But I'll keep the originals because it's my history. It's my start. I'm back. I ran out of storage. I had 0 bytes available. I said, oh, please let there be something I can delete. Something big. And there were like 5 to 6 gigabytes of podcasts that I downloaded. I used to have a very long commute, and I just downloaded entire shows, and I would listen to them in the car. And anyway, so I discovered in the first few weeks of knitting, I started to learn crochet, and I quickly found Jada in Stitches, Jayda. And one of the things that she had that stood out to me that I thought would be a nice little gift I could throw together quickly, I could make a stack of coasters. So I had bought this color. This was my 100% cotton, this dark blue. So she emphasized several times in that video, you want 16 around and 16 this and 16. Remember, the second row there will be 16, and she says 16 all through the video. I finished and I think I had 14, and I was so careful. So I did another one, and I think I had 15. I did another one. I had 14. I kept trying to do them, and I don't think any of them are 16. There might be one that's accidentally 16, but they're all different. So I brought all these things that I've shown so far and a bunch others in a bag home to show my mom when I visited her. Figured she'd like to see them. And I thought she might want these, even though they were wrong. I also thought, well, these are my training ones. I'll make you ones with proper, all the counts are right. She totally didn't care. She's like, I don't care. They all look the same to me. But she said these colors do not go with my house. And I thought, well, I don't have an endless number of colors to choose from here. But we ended up going together to her Joann, which is a Joann Etc., and it was amazing because it was so much bigger. They had so many more products. And And I said, oh, by the way, I wanted to make you the coasters. Pick out the color. I brought her to the cottons. Pick out your colors here from all these. And she immediately said, I want this one. And I went, what? You want camouflage? I said, that doesn't go with your house at all. And she said, no, I want to bring them to the cabin. She said, cotton coasters don't really go with the house where she lives in Florida, but they would go really well with the cabin that she has in Tennessee, in the Great Smoky Mountains, and we're going to come back to that. Look, they're not the same size. This one's smaller. This one's bigger. And they don't have the right count. It's so frustrating. I have no idea what I was doing. So, on the way home to visit her, this was a few months ago, I decided I wanted to try to make her hat on the flight. Because I flew from LAX to RSW, which I think is Fort Myers is RSW. I had just found and fallen in love with the bobble stitch. I thought it was so cool because it makes little bubbles. So I started knitting at the airport. I went through a whole rigmarole about how to bring stuff home without the TSA confiscating it. I was on Ravelry asking in threads. I was reading the TSA website, which has a page on knitting, needles and all that. And everybody was like, it's cool, but don't bring your good stuff because you never know. The agent might take it away. I was like, ugh, all right. So I made it. I was fine. They didn't care. They looked at my laptop battery, like they always do, the power brick, because it's huge for my laptop. And they didn't even look at the needles. So this is what I made her. I actually went to Joann and I picked out all these colors. I don't think they work amazingly well together. And I don't think the pom-pom, which matches the rim, I don't think they match at all the middle part. But I think all in all, it's a hat, and you go, hey, look at that cute hat with a huge pom-pom. I knitted I was hoping it would fit her head. I didn't really know. So it's a lot tight on me. I guess it's not terrible, but it does kind of stretch all the bobbles out, and then they're kind of flat. It was the whole point of making a bobble hat, is that it has these three-dimensional bobbles all over it. It also looks kind of cool from the inside. I'm going to turn on. I'm using the OttLite 3-in-1 from Joann, but it helps the shadows here. You can sort of see better. So it's kind of cool looking from the inside. I almost want that to be a hat. Almost. So the next thing, right after that hat and some coaster work, she said she wanted me to knit a hat for her dog, Bella. Bella is this big. She is we think Chihuahua and Corgi, because she's like a Chihuahua with a sort of half Chihuahua Corgi head, which I think is adorable, and then huge Corgi ears, which are definitely adorable. So, since I was home, I could actually wrap my fabric measuring tape around her head and take measurements, and I did a little gauge swatch. I got a little, I should measure stuff to have any idea. And I made what I think is currently my cutest knit yet. I made this. I'm going to turn this off because it's too bright. I made this little pink hat. I really wanted, I don't know why, because I don't have really strong ideas about knitting, and I don't have patterns and stuff in my head. It's getting there. I'm starting to have things pop into my head, but I was like, no, I really want a cute bubblegum alpine skier hat that a cute girl would wear on a ski slope. And I looked everywhere, Ravelry, the internet, Google, Etsy, and I just wasn't finding it. But there was one thumbnail that kept coming up for a hat that looked remarkably like this. But it was linked to a YouTube video by a Russian girl who spoke in Russian through the whole thing, and all of the words written on the video were in Russian. So I went, all right, I think I can figure that. It's knits and pearls, and there's a little bit of cabling. I think I can figure this out. But the numbers that were in the Russian didn't match up with what she was doing on the screen. And I was like, oh, what's happening? So I pieced together what I could, but then I took screen caps and I posted them to Ravelry and said, can anybody translate this for me? Instantly removed. They were like, no, you're not allowed to post anybody's patterns. And I was very upset. And when I thought about it later, though, I thought, somebody was taking my pattern and posting it without any reference to me. and they removed it, I'd be very glad that they did that. So thank you, admins on Ravelry, and I'm not just sucking up for future brownie points. I do appreciate it's hard to go in there and get in someone's face and say you're not allowed to do that. So I muddled through. I figured it out on my own. I didn't actually end up needing the help. So it's fairly simple anyway. I mean, it's a ribbed beanie. That's the whole beanie. Problem was, and I didn't learn this until I'd knit about this much of it, about an inch plus. I was doing the cables, because the way it's done is every other rib is a little, a little cable. So this is 2 purls, 2 knits, 2 purls, and then a cable. Then this is another knit here, a cable, right? It's hard to see with that light. Right? Yeah, I think you can see it. I wanted that. I thought that added to the cuteness factor. These little candy cane spirals. So I was doing them, and then after a while I thought, wait a minute, I have to flip this rim up, and the inside of the cables do not look good. The cable is here, and on the inside it's not a cable. It's this mess of pearl stuff. So I thought, how do I do this? So what I did was I just knit the hat inside out. I just knit the whole thing this way. So you do the cables on the inside, at the bottom there, and then stop after about an inch, 4 centimeters I think she said. She was doing it in centimeters. And then I just went all the way up, did my decreases, knit rounds in the middle. One weird thing is that the decreases, I was careful to do the decreases the way I wanted them. I wanted to decrease the knit rows, but then I forgot when you flip it inside out, that's decreasing the purl rows. Still works, but I like things to be intentional, and also the decreases look a little strange. There's like a little crossover there, at each rib, because it's the inside of what I knit. The one thing that I had no idea how to do was this hole for the ears. She has huge ears, Bella. But watching her in the video is really simple. You just bind off. You're knitting in the round, you bind off. And then when you come back around again, you just cast on new stitches and keep going. Super simple. You can't really shape the hole that way. It's just a slit. But when, it goes on their head, those kind of pull out a little. This part kind of sinks in a little bit. And there's a little bit of a shape to it. It ended up, despite all my planning, being a little bit small. It's a little bit tight. We got some cute pictures, but we kind of wrenched it onto her head. And she put up with it for a little bit, and then she walked around, and then she shook it off, and that was it. We never put it back on her head. So after that, I wanted to unwind, so I just went to crochet, and I made this weird hat. It looks kind of Middle Eastern. There's something Middle Eastern about this. I've actually found a style of hat by looking up Middle Eastern hats that looks a lot like this. There's a name, and I can't remember what it was. But what I did here was just do knit through the back loop back and forth to make a rib. It's just single crochets, knit through the back loop. Very simple. And when I got up here, I started making chains and attaching them again. And I actually sort of learned how to do that in part of this, because you're doing that on the outsides there. So I was just making this up as I went. I didn't have a pattern. I just said, I don't know, I'll do 30 or whatever it was. And then when I went around again, I was just chaining a few and then picking through one of the tops of the loops. So I ended up making this line around there. And then I did more loops and came around again, looping onto the loops. And then when I got to the middle, I had a bunch of loops left over, so I just put the yarn through and pulled it tight and tied it off and wove in the ends. A little weird weaving in the ends when you have netting. Basically, I was weaving it back through the chain of net. So, interesting. It was kind of cool, and it was neat that I could just invent this mandala kind of pattern while watching TV with my mom. I was just sort of making it up as I went. It's kind of cool. I would do a little bit of counting the loops and going, I think that divides by this, so I'm going to skip every 3 loops. So I would do things like that. So, my mom's birthday is in 4 days, and she's having friends visit we used to live in New Jersey, and she's having friends visit from New Jersey. And she said to me that her friend, Susie, has a dog named Asher, and Asher is a French bulldog, a Frenchie. She said, can you make him a hat? No, and I don't know how big their heads are. I put his, the hat that I made, Asher, in a little bag. It's all the same kind of blues. This is holographic. Ooh. Has a little blue butterfly. So I bought these stickers. I think when I was visiting her, I went to her check out her Michaels after the Joann's thing. I went by myself, and they have that Isle of Puffy stickers and things. I don't know why I love all that stuff so much, but I was like, oh, I want to get this thing. It was all nice mother stuff, like about how nice mothers are, and like best friend and mother's love and all that. And I was like, ooh. Then I got home and I was like, what do I stick these on? I don't know why I got these. I stick them on. I almost put them on her appliances and on the stuff in the fridge. I was like, why did I buy these? Now I thought, oh, I'm putting all these packages together. So this one has a butterfly on it, a puffy butterfly. I'm going to take the hat out to show you. That's why I didn't tape it up yet, because I knew I was going to try to refilm this. I made this. I did a lot of research to try to figure out how big their heads are. I have learned a little bit so I could make some big old ear holes this time, because French bulldogs have massive ears. So I thought, I still don't really know how big his head is, though. So I watched a bunch of videos, I looked up stuff, I tried to get measurements, I couldn't find anything. I asked on Ravelry, nobody there knew. But I watched a guy playing with one, and I said, if that dog was here, I think I would grab his head and I'd be like that. Right? Like a little cantaloupe. I think it's about that big. And I looked around my room, and I found this, which was a present from a family member. It's the moon. It's one of those plastic light-up moons that were popular recently. So, put it up here in the shadow. When you tap on it, it lights warm light. If you tap again, it goes cool light. That one actually starts to look a little like the moon. And if you tap again, I think it just turns on both, and it's kind of like a middling, not cool, not warm light. Still kind of warm. I measured it. It's 19 inches circumference. And the hat is actually a little small, but I made the hat a little, 1x1 rib, because 1x1 rib is very stretchy, so this can stretch over the head. And it's not even, it feels tight, it looks tight, or it doesn't feel tight, it looks tight, but it's not that tight. Also, if you look at a French Bulldog's head, usually in most of the positions they're in, they have no back of their head. Their head just goes straight into a neck, like this. It's like their back is where my arm is, their neck is where and there's like nothing to put a hat over. So I knew it was just going to kind of sit flat. It did on Bella too, when we put this on her. When she would look around, it was kind of sitting like this, like flat, across the top of her head, because she doesn't really have a back of her head like a human. So I thought, well, that's not going to be a very tall hat then. It's going to stretch out a little bit maybe, and it has to have tassels, has to have ties to tie under the chin, because that will pull it down onto the head and hold it there. The flaps for the ears are in pattern. So what I did was pick up the right loop and then pick up a pearl downward, and then pick up the right loop of a knit, pick up the next pearl downward, and I picked up 9, 1 centered on the stitch and 4 on either side. And then I just knit back and forth. I kept flipping the hat, just like I'm knitting flat, and whenever I was on the outside, I would do my knit 2 together and my SSK, and I brought it down until there were 3 stitches, and it was purl, knit, purl, and then I just switched to I-cord. I did these in pattern, so I would do, you see the purl and the knit and the purl at the bottom there? So there's a knit in the middle, and then there's this rounding. If you go around, there's a purl on this side, and there's a purl on this side. The way I did it, both of them have their knit stitch on the outside. So you turn this around, you've got the knit stitch. It's sort of like a little detail that runs down the outside of the cord. Kind of like it. So they are just triangles, and then when they're pulled out in the round, they make these big round holes. I just made a big pom-pom, because my mom actually said it needs a big pom-pom, of course. Yes, of course. So I've now made 2 hats for dogs. Sort of similar. A lot more going on in this one, although this has cables. That's that present. That's for Mom to give, and I put a little card on here. It says it's for Asher. I explained that it's 100% acrylic. One of the gifts that I wrapped up already, I went to the public library yesterday. I printed some stuff, and that'll come up in a moment. And then I went to the library because it was right down the street. And I just looked through, and I found a book. So it's One of a Kind Mom. It's one of those puffy stickers. I got the little bow. I had to tape it on because it wasn't sticking. And it's a book, so I picked up some writing paper. She likes Twilight, and more on that in a moment too. So this is just another Stephanie Meyer. It's The Host by Stephanie Meyer. I don't know if she'll like it, but it was 50 cents used. It actually has the previous owner's name written in it in pink marker. But, you know, if she likes it, whatever. While I was there, I also picked up 2 more books. These are used, they were $1 each, hardcover. Letters from a Nut. I've actually known about this book for a very long time because Jerry Seinfeld, who wrote the introduction, talked about this at some point. He said he was at a friend's place, or he was at some guy's house, and there were letters on the table, and he started reading them while he was sitting there, and he was laughing his butt off because this guy writes letters to companies that are completely insane, and the companies fall all over themselves trying to help, or telling them, no, we cannot do that. So I thought, for $1 it would be fun to have. I've thought of that book a few times over the years. And then this one, I was watching a podcast, knitting podcast, and someone was talking about how, and everything was a mess, but I had a Tim Gunn moment, and then the other person said, yeah, that's right, make it work. I said, that must be a Tim Gunn thing. So I know who Tim Gunn is, sort of. I'm not really in the fashion world. I think that's who he is. The consummate gentleman. So I picked up his book for $1, Gunn's Golden Rules. It's a beautiful cover. I have a wall of books myself. I bought a ton of those Barnes & Noble beautiful leather-bound books. So they're on sale for 50% off. More on that later if this becomes a podcast, but I liked it because right on the back, rule number 1, make it work. It's right there. I thought, I'd like more of that in my life. So I'm going to read that and see, what does he do to make things work? That's what I'm doing here. I've been putting off this more than 10 years. I think since YouTube started, I've been wanting to make videos, YouTube-like videos, and, this kind of stuff, just showing off ideas, collaborating maybe. So I also have, another one of these because I bought one for myself. Not a happy birthday box, but it's a hose attachment for a vacuum cleaner that has a ton of little straws coming off, little teeny tubes, so you can use it like a duster, but it's vacuuming, and you can just vacuum all around coins and keys and utensils and whatever else, and it sucks up all the dust around them, but it won't suck them up because it's a bunch of little teeny holes on the ends of flapping bristles. So I wanted one of those when I saw it, and I thought, I was in Bed Bath & Beyond. I was like, $20, I'm going to get that for Mom. That's one thing. This one is a little idea I had. I was trying to think of how to put these things somewhere safe. And the little sticker on top, Mom and Me, which has nothing to do with this jar. This is just a mason jar I've had forever. And inside here I was at my local yarn shop, which is closing in 2 days. So sad. It's the only one in my city. There are a bunch below me in the neighboring city, but this is like 5-7 miles away. Just drove right down the street. I was there. I've been there a lot. I've only been doing this for a few months, and I've been there so many times. But they had jars of buttons, and my mom and I have this thing for hedgehogs. I had stuffed hedgehogs when I was a kid. So I found this jar of little hedgehog buttons, and I took a picture and sent it to her, and she immediately texted back, get me 2 of the blue ones. Well, in the photo, a bunch of different ones look blue, so I just got them all. 2 of each color. So I have no idea why she wants them or what she's going to do with them. But I also thought, how am I going to ship these so they look cool? I'm starting to think about presentation. That's the knitting world is making me do that. I never cared. Well, I may have cared, but I've never invested any time. So just put them in. I put some tissue paper. I bought at Walmart last night because I thought, where do you get wrapping paper? And it's like, oh, Target, Walmart, and Joann is right next door. I was already at Joann, so I picked up a lot of this, and I spent way too long trying to pick out which one do I want, the more solid colors or the pastel-y bright pink ones. And I was like, well, it's June, it's a summer birthday. I think she'll want some pops of color. I don't know. We'll see. Trying. Anyway, so I thought that was just a nice little presentation. Put them in a jar. Put some green paper to make it pop. The green paper sort of got a little theme going with green against kind of like, you know, black and white and silver. So she's going to get this and go, what is this thing? And open it up and find her little buttons. She may not even remember what they're for. Onward. I've been trying to buy a thing for my mom from Etsy for like 2 years. I think 2 Christmases and 2 birthdays now I've wanted to buy it for her, and it's always like too late when I remember that her birthday's coming up, because it has to ship from Russia, and I've written back and been like, I'm sorry, there's not enough time, I won't get here in time for Christmas. And I've done that like 4 times in a row now. This year I'm getting better. I'm starting to think ahead of time, like, oh, mom's birthday's coming up, let me do something. I'm also, especially now that I'm in like the knitting world, I'm running into things that she might like. Not that she's big on knitwear, but there's all kinds of little incidental things like hedgehog buttons that are crossing my view. So this thing is by a woman on Etsy named Lucia Knits. And the presentation is wonderful. She sent it in this beautiful, it's actually a money envelope. If you know Russian, tell me what that says. It's backwards, I think. I don't think it's going to flip around. But it's to send money, obviously. And you can see when you open it, the background is all dollars, money, or rubles, or whatever they use. There's some more text if you want to translate that, feel free. Inside there, well, actually, before I get to that, along with this, in the mailer that this arrived in, was this pretty postcard, which focuses so nicely here. On my phone last night, it was all blurry. I couldn't get it to focus. So it's a painting of, I guess, the Russian landscape. And she wrote in English, "Dear Gary, thank you. I wish love, joy, happiness, and wealth to you and your family. Best regards, Lucia." Inside the money mailer thing here was this cute little paper thing with the flowers on it. And inside there was the thing I wanted to get my mom. She's always identified with Cinderella because she's pined for the riches, the palace, the prince, but she's always like on her hands and knees scrubbing floors and things. So she's also been collecting amigurumi. So I found this thing and I was like, oh man, this is absolutely perfect. And now 2 years later, I'm finally getting it for her. It's Cinderella, micro amigurumi style. She has a face. She has little hair. This is all thread. She's got 2 layers of skirt on and a little apron thingy on top. And it actually has detail to it. It's like it has, you know, it's all crocheted. She's got little teeny arms, and they're actually like separate. They're free. They move. She's got like little top on, little things go over her shoulders. It's a tied little thing for her ponytail, and it's incredible, the detail. But it gets better. It's one of those, you may know these kind of things. The dress, don't worry, I'm not being lewd here, flips up, and she flips over. And she's in her ball gown. She's ready for the ball. There she is with her little headband. Now her hair is up in a little dew. I'm so fascinated by this. The micro, where if it was just a big doll, I'd go, that's cute, but it's so tiny. And it's so strong. I mean, this is thread that's been crocheted. It's actually really tough. It feels, I mean, it arrived in a flat money mailer. I was like, is this going to be all destroyed? But no, it's in great shape. And look, she has a little ball glove. She has gloves on. These little arms move. They're so tiny. She has a little dress with straps. This is amazing. So it's perfect. I think she's going to absolutely love this. So I'm sending it this way. It's really funny to see the 2 bodies poking out of each other. It's like the hands kind of end in the same place, like they could hold hands if the dresses weren't in the way. So anyway, I love this thing. I'm so happy it arrived. I wrote a gushing letter back to Lucia. She wrote another gushing letter back to me. She's so sweet. When I visited Mom, even though I'm 40, I'm like her little kid, she was like, well, pick out some yarn and I'll buy you some yarn. So I put a lot of yarn in a basket and she bought me yarn. One of them I bought specifically because her house is her cabin in Tennessee is in the Great Smoky Mountains. And I've stayed there. It's gorgeous, and the mountains actually smoke, so they're named appropriately. It's mist, I guess, or steam or something, but it's like billowing clouds. I took these amazing stop-motion videos, or time-lapse videos, where I taped my phone to her makeup mirror and taped the makeup mirror to the banister outside on the deck, and just filmed, and you just see these like clouds rising up and like going over the mountains. So there was a colorway. Lion Brand Yarns has a brand of yarn called Hometown USA, and they're all named for scenic places in the U.S. And this one was a colorway called Great Smoky Mountains, and I was like, how cool would it be if I bought Great Smoky Mountains yarn and I made her a hat that she could wear, because it gets cold in Tennessee. Not so much in Florida, but where she is in Tennessee, it does get really cold, and she has to walk the dogs in the morning. I changed my mind later and decided I wanted to make a pair of gloves. And I thought, well, before I go and make her a terrible pair of gloves, I'm going to make myself a pair. Now, I bought 2 skeins of this stuff, and this is what's left after all of my experimenting and making the gloves for her. So this was the first one. And by the way, I'll say that the pattern I settled on, this isn't the first one, this is the first attempt. The pattern I settled on was the January 1942 revision of the World War II Red Cross Army Gloves for Men. And there's a modified version by someone with the name Selyn and then a number, I forget. Celine or Celine something, number. So just look up modified army gloves and you'll find the pattern. It's the first thing that pops up. And you'll see Celine. So this was like me getting to grips with, I did the smaller gauge for this and the smaller needle for this and went up a size for this. But as I was doing it, I was thinking, this looks like a small glove. It's too small to get on my hand. It was supposed to fit me. And I actually went up a couple of needle sizes. I think they wanted like a 1.5 and a 2.5, and I think I went 2 and 3. And I tried to knit kind of loosely, even though I'm still a little bit of a tight knitter sometimes. I've gotten a lot better lately. So I moved on, and I made a full glove, and it really matters how many stitches you pick up. When there's grab all the ones you saved on the loop and then pick up 2 more, and I would pick up 3, whatever. So the thumb is big, the pinky's really tiny. It fits badly. Yeah, see, I'm like having a struggle. I can pull this and get my fingers in there. It's not worth it. So I didn't do a great job weaving in the ends. There are holes between the webbings, have holes in them. I think more in the thumb area. But it was like, okay, I've actually made a glove. It's a bad glove. The thumb and the pinky are so far off size. But it's a glove. And I said, I hope I have enough to keep making more gloves, because I want to make me a pair and I want to make her a pair. So I got drastic. I went up from 2 and 3 to 6 and 8 or something like that for the things. But I got a pair of gloves that looks like gloves. They're supposed to look like this. They're just work gloves, so they're supposed to be kind of fat-fingered when they're folded up like this. But I also love that they have a line of pearls on both sides of the thumb. So the thumb kind of can stretch out and show that little one rib, right, which is kind of cool. Looks cool. You'll see some stair stepping here because I was doing my make ones. I was doing make one lefts instead of rights and vice versa. I think this one might be better. It's a little more even. Anyway. So I did the right one first. And look at this. It's actually slightly loose, but I kind of like it that way. It's comfy. And it is really cool that you can stop knitting the fingers when they fit perfectly. This looks like a mess up. It's just some weird yarn pool. It's some weird pooling of the colors. But man, look at that. It's a glove. And it fits. It's right to my fingertips. Comfy, loose. Feels almost silky because it's so loose. It's such a... The fabric on this thing is so much denser because the needles were smaller. You can see the knits here are much bigger. And the person in the thing actually the gloves I liked most in this pattern, because you can look at everybody's projects based on that pattern. They were like, it makes a really dense fabric that I love, and I might have loved it if it was big enough. So this is the same number of everything, it's just bigger needles, and it just fits so nicely. So here's the other one. So this was like the confidence builder, where I said, I think I can make mom's gloves now. And then I was looking through all these patterns. It's very bloomy. There's a lot of halo. I was, like blowing dusts. Yeah, it's very hairy. So you'll get like 2 inches of, one fiber coming off. But look at that. They match. They're gloves. They're little teeny problems, but they're so minor. I wouldn't even call attention to them, like I always do. So this is gloves that women in the 40s would make and send to the soldiers for the war effort. So those are the men's gloves. And as I said, I had the confidence to make mom's gloves. I have no idea if they're going to fit. So I started knitting mom's pattern, and I took what I learned from those 4 gloves, 2 bad ones, 2 good ones that match. And I knit this thing, and it was super dense again. It feels like burlap. I cannot get my hand into this one. I can't even get past it's so tight. And I thought, my mom doesn't have super dainty hands. She doesn't have like big, tough hands, but she doesn't have like little teeny, skinny things like this. So I stopped at the thumb. I went, I'm not going to finish. So then I moved to... Now I'm gonna skip ahead here. We'll see the gloves in a moment because they're sort of inside of the wrapping. I was trying to find a glove box, like the kind where you pull the lid off and there's a pair of gloves that look nice in there, like wrapped in tissue paper. I wanted to make a presentation out of it. I just couldn't find them anywhere. I was standing in Joann, kind of like, what am I gonna do? And I found a lidded box. It was sort of like paper mache, and it opens like a book. And I went, I can get that, and I'm going to do something cool with it. Don't know what, but I'm going to do that. And I had no time to really do this. But I thought, my mom, like so many women, loves Twilight. She wants to visit Forks, Washington, where it takes place. My friends just did, and she was all jealous because they had a picture in front of the now entering Forks billboard. So I spent some hours yesterday taking pictures of my hands, and I made a cover for it. It says Smoke, has my name. I kind of mimicked. I had the picture. This is an apple in the original, and it's a woman's hands, so there's no hair. But those are my hands, and I'm holding the remainder of the yarn. And I took like 10 pictures to get this one. I tried to make it look like an apple with the stem. That's the center pull from a center pull cake. I made this little thing on my yarn winder. And instead of putting Twilight, I got the Twilight font and I wrote Smoke, because it's the Great Smoky Mountains, it's the Great Smoky Mountain colorway of this yarn. I'm going to explain all that to her later. And then I did this, I'll let you read it. I'll put it's backwards. I'll read it. I made this to look like the original book, and there's multiple printings, so I picked the one that had a lot of body text so I could put something in there. So the red text at the top, which I kept the W from the thing, and then I typed the rest in. I tried to match up the font sizes and spacings and all that. And this is supposed to sound like the words that are on the book, so it's a little stilted. But when you loved the one who was buying you yarn, it left you no options. How could you knit? How could you crochet and not make them something nice for their birthday? If they gave you life, how could you not honor theirs? If it was someone you truly loved? To make a fitted knit gift for someone in secret is both fantasy and nightmare woven into a tense tapestry for Gary Fixler. Pulled in one direction by his intense passion for knitting and in another by his profound laziness and poor time management skills, he has endured a tumultuous month of improper gauge, frogging, and investigation to reach a best guess at fit. His research through average hand sizes, I actually have photos of hands with measurements that I found on the web, and I wanted that because I actually zoomed in to get my hand to match, and I put the glove up against, and then I held the woman's glove up against the woman's hand, and I mean, it fits. I think this is going to work. Ravelry project notes and I read their notes. I read every woman was saying, I wish I'd made it like 2 needles larger. I wish I had put one more stitch in the thumb. It was always too small. I think people in the 40s were smaller. His research through average hand sizes, Ravelry project notes, and dozens of photos of his mother petting dogs and holding objects can only suggest a correct stitch count. So I take photos of everything, so I had photos and videos of her petting the dog, and she's always got her hand like this, or it's never like that in any... So I did finally find like 2 photos, and I went, okay, I can get the general sense of her finger lengths. So I did my best. It's not going to be perfect like my gloves are, because I could test mine. I actually was sticking my finger in there and saying 2 more rows, pull my finger out, knit 2 more rows. Now that Gary has knit his decision, the World War II Army gloves for women pattern, created in 1942 by the Red Cross, he can only ship the gift and hope for the best. Just when the frayed strands of Gary's creative life, first expressed in origami, it's one of my hobbies, then displayed through woodworking and electronics, that's 2 other of my hobbies, seem to heal and knit together. Could they be unraveled forever? Written the way they wrote it. So that seem to heal and knit together, that's word for word from the book. And I went, hey, it says knit right on the book. So I underlined it. There's a little underline on knit. Like, look, it says knit. And then she had 6 books because they published, it's her first book, I think, but they had published all the other ones by the time this reprint was made. So they put all 6 books across. I deleted 2 because I only had 4 things. But these are the coasters I made. That's the bobble stitch hat. That's Bella's beanie. And this is a project I didn't show you because I don't have it. It's a blanket I made for a friend. And I can talk about that in another episode. I'm going to have episodes if this is a podcast. I don't know. And then I've got the where you can find it on Ravelry, which is, I made the project so I could get the thing, but I made it private, where you have to send the link to people to see it. And there's no picture or details. I'll fill them in, but I wanted it so you could type this in and go to the project for the gloves. And it also has my URL to Ravelry. And then I love that I did this. I just love myself. This UPC, I covered over the original. This is a photo I took of the UPC on the yarn for the colorway. It says 149 Great Smoky Mountains 3 times for some reason, because that's what they do. But yeah, if you went to Joann and grabbed their scanner and went boop, it would come up as that yarn on their computer. So that's all for the covers. I think she'll get a kick out of it. And then inside, I signed it as though it was a book signed to her. My mom's name is Joyce. To Joyce, thanks for being my mom and my #1 fan. Like I wrote this book. All my love, and I signed it. And then inside, each glove is in its own little thing, and there they are. That's one. There's another one underneath the next layer of tissue paper there. But, let's see, look at this, look at the differences. Look at this dimorphism here. But that's the women's pattern, this is the men's pattern. So they're very similar, they're kind of the same thing. I have a little card. I made a really lousy mom on there with a heart. It looks terrible. This I'm going to wrap in maybe, I think this other paper I got, it's another script font word page thing, gift wrap with golden words, which sort of goes along with this one with the black and white words. Also because I had a plan to make a card too, but I bought this in case. Home is where my mom is. And it's true. So I will fill that out and put that in there too. It's going to be quite a little package. We've got the Host by Stephanie Meyer. We've got Smoke, the gloves I made for her. We've got the jar with the hedgehog buttons. We got this little card. We've got the dust thing for the vacuum. I've got some more stickers I'm going to put on there. And I'll also put some stickers on this thing. So that'll use up a lot of these. And we also have Cinderella. That's going to go, I'm going to fold that all up and then I'll wrap that too. I'll pick one of these things so it looks, you know, so I have a theme, a couple of packages in the same paper. And we've also got this, which is just going to go in loose. I don't care if it gets beat up because it's really just to transport the hat so she can give it to her friend. And I have to remember to put the hat back inside. Okay, that's a good first episode, I think. I'm looking around at the mess. All that stuff I showed you is just scattered around me. I'm hoping this keeps growing. I'd love to form a community. I'd love to have a Ravelry channel to chat about this stuff. I'd like to pick back up into the woodworking. I got to clean a lot of stuff and get the garage set back up. I'd love to take you on all my adventures. I'd like to be cognizant of the fact that a lot of knitters just want to watch a knitting podcast and not see woodworking or other things, but I'd like to keep it tied together. I think I'll have some people in my tribe who like all of it and will watch whatever I do. We'll see. So, thanks again, and I have no cool catchphrases or anything yet. Maybe I'll develop some. We'll see. Until then, thanks again, and goodbye.